cover some of my favorite book recommendations about topics that are a little more difficult and heavy in general, but I think are very relevant right now. I truly believe everyone should learn about different races and religions and cultures and people because it enables us to empathize with other people and to understand where everyone is coming from. So my first book recommendation is Stamped from the Beginning, A Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. As the title suggests, this book focuses on the origin of racist ideas in America through the perspective of 5 American intellectual figures. So Kendi goes in depth about what was going on during that time and kind of what cemented or challenged the racist ideas. The most recent figure that is discussed in this book is Angela Davis, so kind of what was going on in the civil rights era / movement time, and what kind of challenges she had to combat from the history of the racist ideas that were confronted by her. It explains how these racist ideas came to be, how they were thought of, how they were calculated, and how it has permeated into society, and just how we got to where we are. It's definitely a lot to absorb. There's lots and lots of information in this book, but it allows for great self-reflection and analysis. I've read it twice now. I read it once when I bought the book, and again this past summer. It just allows for a good historical context. And Kendi actually gave a talk at my university, and he was talking about how it's not just enough to be not racist, but to be truly anti-racist, you do have to look inward. Also in the talk, Kendi talked about how when writing this book and also his other works, that he had to address some of the internalized racist ideas that he had himself about his own race. So again, this book is very extensive, so if you're looking for a holistic, deep, in-depth book, this is definitely for you. This book has definitely changed my perspective on lots and lots of things. It is absolutely amazing. The next book I recommend is Yellow, Race in America Beyond Black and White by Frank H. Wu. So this book, as you could guess, is focusing on Asians and the Asian American experience, and it talks about how Black people, white people, and Asian people tend to be triangulated. So as an Asian person, I truly believe that anti-Asian racism is not talked about. Racism against Asians it does look different than racism that manifests against Black people and the Black community. A lot of people like to equate the experiences of people of color in general, like, oh, well, you aren't as bad as this or Y, and you're not experiencing this or X or Y. But any racist experience, microaggression that you may encounter or know of someone has encountered, that is still bad, and it's not negated by the fact that it isn't as bad as this. So this book really confronts that. It also confronts the model minority stereotype that permeates into the Asian identity. So if you don't know, the model minority stereotype is the idea that Asians as a whole are better than other groups of color because they're more successful or smarter and are better at their jobs and earn more money. But it does not encapsulate the diversity of Asian Americans, and it focuses really on East Asia and not Southeast Asia. So that stereotype creates a wedge between Asians and other people of color. Or another topic that's covered is the idea of the perpetual foreigner stereotype, and also it talks about affirmative action and that whole thing. I really like it because as an Asian person, I definitely feel like the Asian experience is not usually highlighted. As I've come to be more comfortable with my identity, there have been a lot of questions and experiences that I've had, and I wanted to see if there's been other people that have experienced it as well. So the next book I recommend is Hands Up, Don't Shoot by Jennifer E. Kobina. This is a recent book published in 2019. So this book analyzes the relationship between the Black community and police and how it has gotten to the point that it is now. So this book generally analyzes how the deaths of Freddie Gray and Michael Brown had ignited the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests in Ferguson and Baltimore. Kobina establishes great historical context to truly analyze the relationship that Black communities and other communities of color have with police. It is a very complicated relationship that again has great rich history. Kobina does a great job at dissecting that and allowing the reader to understand where these communities are coming from. Kabina also focuses on protesters in this book. She focuses and talks to protesters, saying, you know, why they protest, why they join the Black Lives Matter movement, and what the movement means to them. So this is a really, really great book to learn more about protests and Black Lives Matter movement and the context of the relationship between police and communities of color. So the next book I recommend is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So this book focuses on the United States system that has led millions of African Americans in the US at a disproportionate rate to other races to be incarcerated. So this book discusses the targeting of Black men that occurred during the war on drugs era and how incarceration was used as a tool to discriminate against Black communities and other communities of color. This book also discusses life after prison, how it's hard to get jobs, it's hard to get housing, and how that can culminate into a lesser quality of life. Mass incarceration is a heavy topic and it's hard to talk about, but I believe Michelle Alexander does a great job at discussing it, again, providing historical context backed up with current statistics that explain, you know, the damage it causes onto communities of color and especially the Black community. I really like this book because it was something I knew generally about but did not know this much in depth about how deep and, you know, exhaustive this problem has been and how our society has built this system. So this book is a very important read because it is still relevant today. You know, society still runs on this system, and it's important to recognize the role of prisons are in our society. The last book I'm recommending is James Baldwin's collection of essays. So this book and also James Baldwin is my favorite author of all time. His prose is just so eloquent and interesting and honestly amazing. So this book has, you know, some short stories, but also a collection of his essays that were written in the 50s and 60s. The main one that is highlighted on the book sleeve and is the most relevant to this video is called The Fire Next Time, which focuses on intricacies of race, sex, and class in America in the 50s and 60s. His writings are still very relevant, even though they were written almost like 60 years ago, and I would just be very interested in seeing what his perspective would be like right now. For people who would want to read not necessarily like a history book, but more like a short essay, this is definitely for you. Finding some of his essays online or getting this collection, just amazing. Overall, these books are so great and I truly recommend them to you. I believe that reading and knowledge of history is very important, and all of these topics that these books cover are extremely relevant right now. Learning about other people and in turn learning more about yourself and self-reflecting is extremely important. So thank you all so much for watching. I will link the books down below. Please check them out. Please let me know if you read them, and thank you so much for watching.